Hey guys, Level Cap here. Today I have a bunch of really cool things to talk about regarding Star Citizen. One of them is that the new 3.0 alpha has just launched to the live servers, meaning anybody who has purchased a copy of the game at this point can now play the 3.0 edition of the game. Speaking of which, if you are going to purchase a copy of the game or sign up for a Star Citizen account, use this code here. This is my referral code. It'll give you some extra in-game currency and it'll help me progress towards that awesome Javelin destroyer. Some of the cool new things that you can do in Star Citizen 3.0 are planetary landings, which I gotta say everybody's gotta try it out at least once. Going down through the atmosphere and landing on a planet's surface is really a different experience. I even recommend landing on some of the smaller moons with low gravity and try driving a buggy around and seeing how much air you can get. There's a lot of cool things you can do in 3.0. And what's exciting about this build is that it really does represent the majority of the major features being implemented in Star Citizen. The performance is pretty garbage right now. I mean, you might be getting like 7 FPS in certain dogfights. I've seen people pulling in 30 or even more FPS. I think it really just depends how taxed the server is at the time when you log on. But what's exciting is that the features are in, which means now they can start working on refining the engine, getting better performance, and fixing bugs and just making it an overall more fluid and smooth process. Now, of course, 3.0 for everyone is exciting news. It's been long awaited, so Star Citizen fans should be happy to get it, and new players should have a much more rich experience when diving into the game for the first time. But something even cooler, at least cooler in my opinion, happened, which was a really awesome over an hour-long live gameplay experience that they showed off on Twitch. And that's the footage that you're watching right now. This is a vertical slice of the single-player game. A vertical slice in game development terms is when they decide to try and push one specific area of the game to near completion state, and that will allow them to test out a bunch of different things, like one, how the game plays out, and two, how the production pipeline worked for that so they can try and optimize it for other areas of the game. And so rather than taking the first mission of the game and pushing that to completion, they instead took a mission that's about a third of the way through. And in the start here, you see our character wake up aboard a bed, and this bed is aboard an Idris capital class ship. Now, what's really exciting about this is that the Idris is a ship that you can fly in the persistent universe. It's not in 3.0 yet, but it should be in the persistent universe in the near future. As you can see, it is mostly complete. It was one of the first capital class ships really shown off, and they've also been teasing it recently in the persistent universe with some cool gameplay of two Idrises fighting in space, and Idris landing on a planet's surface, people getting on the docking ramp and all that kind of stuff. And now we get to see a fully fleshed out interior. We've seen teases of it before, but this time around in single player with a fully manned AI crew, it really is something else to behold. Not only is the detail truly immaculate and fully functional at the same time, but it still reminds me that all of this stuff is bound to a ship that can fly through space in multiplayer. So I could be running around corridors of this thing while we're under attack from fighters outside, while other players are hitting us with strafing runs and stuff, and I gotta like run up to the bridge to like man a station or run over to a turret. Like, the basic concepts of Star Citizen are still blowing my mind, especially when we start seeing them realized in the fidelity that's being shown here. And this, of course, is the bridge of the Idris with a really beautiful view. You can see a mining station out to the right, and we even get to see some small fighters fly right overhead, and again, a fully functioning universe. This isn't just a skybox outside of the ship. We're going to fly out of this ship in just a second and continue on with the mission seamlessly. No loading whatsoever, and it's kind of mind-blowing how far this mission goes without needing any loading screens. Despite it being a single-player mission, it is still designed in a sandbox-like environment, so you don't necessarily have to go from point A to point B or complete the tasks at hand in the way that you think the game wants you to. You can be creative, come up with your own approaches to situations, and explore pretty much freely. Now, I'm going to cut around this hour-plus long gameplay demo because obviously I don't want to talk over an entire hour of gameplay as much as I feel like I could easily at this point. I'm that excited and hyped about Star Citizen, but something that really surprised me about this gameplay demo was the writing and the characters. Now, this might seem like something that isn't necessarily too integral to the multiplayer universe and whatnot. You might be more interested in just how cool the spaceship battles are. But the fact that they've hired a huge AAA cast of actors, and that in this single player mission here, we get briefed by Liam Cunningham from Game of Thrones, and then Mark Hamill is basically the squadron leader. He's your lieutenant that's basically giving you orders when you go out on your fighter mission. The dialogue is really good. The characters are well realized and very believable. I feel like I'm playing an episode of Battlestar Galactica, and I mean that as a huge compliment, because that show to me felt very real, just as this game feels very real. The characters feel believable, they're well written, they behave in realistic manners, the ship feels alive, and because there's no loading and the whole ship is fully realized without any sort of skipping around, like if you want to go into the fighter bay and launch, you've got to suit up in your pilot suit, get down to the fighter bay, get the launch clearance, I guess, from the guy who's controlling the fighters down there, and then actually fly your fighter out of the ship on the mission. They don't take you away from the game or skip you ahead or make you teleport around. It feels like everything you're doing is physical and real and has impact on the game universe, just as the characters do. And the fact that we only saw limited performances by a few actors in this, and that the cast of the game has people like Gary Oldman, Mark Strong, we have Ben Mendelsohn, which we saw a little bit in this demo, Gillian Anderson, Andy Serkis. I mean, this has a huge cast of really, really good actors, and I honestly can't wait to see who they play in the game. Now, at this point in the demo, you've launched your Gladiuses. Mark Hamill is flying, you're his wingman, and you're going to go try and investigate a wreckage of a ship. And this is the Odin System, and I believe, if I was listening to the director commentary properly, it's like a nova, or there was like a supernova that happened, and it blew up some planets or something along those lines. So instead of like seeing lots of big planets, we're seeing lots of big planet fragments and big chunks of rocks in space with gaseous clouds and anomalies and lots of crazy weather effects and atmospheric effects going on in space, which is really cool. And you'll actually see that when you do a short quantum jump, that these clouds we see in the distance, again, aren't just skyboxes, but are actually physically there. I'm not really sure how they figured out how to do volumetric clouds on this scale, but it does look amazing. And it sort of gives us a taste of what the developers can do with some of these large-scale particle effects and atmospheric effects for making each system feel different and unique. Because the system in the persistent universe right now feels very much like a traditional star system. It's dark, it's black, it's got gas giants, planets that look like Mars, moons that look like the moons. It's kind of typical for the most part, and maybe that's done unintentionally just to show us that they can do the basics, but they're holding out with all this really cool stuff here, like as we're watching this player fly between two giant asteroids, and we're seeing like static electric charges zap between the two rocks and particles and debris flying between the two. It looks flipping cool, and I'm thinking, you know what, if every single player mission has this kind of visual fidelity and cool stuff to look at, it's going to be a really fun campaign. Now, as you start progressing more in the mission, you can see that it does give you the standard spaceship space battle combat that you would expect in a space sim game, but it goes so much further beyond that, not just with the story and the characters and the acting, but the fact that this fighter is not what you're bound to for the entire mission. You have the opportunities, really at any time you can get out of your fighter and fly through space in your spacesuit. And this of course comes in handy when you're investigating a derelict ship later in the mission to try and get some intel as to where the pilot went. So not only do you get the fighter pilot element, but you also get a detective element where you're gathering intel and trying to figure out what happened to certain people. And sure, we're investigating a pretty small ship here in this sequence, but imagine investigating massive derelict capital ships, you know, where you're having to go through different bulkheads and different levels of these huge ships searching for intel. There could be some really creative and interesting missions that have little to do with actually flying a spaceship in space and more about EVA opportunities or ground combat missions. Now, of course, why would you do a vertical slice of a single player mission if it didn't involve some type of ground combat? That's right, the mission seamlessly transitions from space down through the atmosphere of a planet, and then you're able to actually land on a base and get out and get into some actual firefights. And although anybody who's been following Star Citizen for a while knows that this tech has been in the game for a bit now, it's still really exciting to see it all transition seamlessly in a single player mission. And with seemingly unlimited freedom in ways to approach each scenario, the player in this flew down to the planet's surface in a specific trajectory. He didn't have to necessarily. The mission doesn't have to progress in this same way every single time, but it's pretty darn cool just to see that the game has that kind of dynamic element to it. Now, admittedly, as impressive as this demo is, and as excited as it does get me for the single player aspect of the game, certain areas of it do look rough. Just because it's a vertical slice doesn't mean it's a finished product of the game. The frame rate looked quite choppy at certain areas, the first person combat looked a little bit finicky, and the UI itself looked far from complete. These were all things that the game developers actually address in their director commentary, saying that, you know, these aspects of the game just aren't finished and they need to do a lot more work on them. But it is still really exciting to sort of see this as a preview, as a prototype of what the game can become. And if this is just one mission in a series of many missions with potentially many more to come based on the post-launch success of the game, I'm freaking excited. Like, I can't wait to see how the storylines progress. I'm sure they're saving the best for last. I mean, they're giving us a mission that gives us a little bit of everything here and shows us a little bit of every aspect of the game, but they're not showing us giant fleet battles, and you know that's coming. I mean, imagine like flying out of the hangar of one of these big capital class ships to be surrounded by like an entire fleet of capital class ships blowing each other apart in space as you're flying in between massive cannons and laser beams and whatnot. That is going to be probably like what gets me the most excited for this. And of course that's in the game, and I'm super excited for that and everything that comes between the very first mission and the very last mission. It looks cool. They have so much freedom here given what they've developed with the game engine, and the writing is already very impressive. It gives me a huge amount of hope and a huge amount of faith in what the end product could be. Anyway, I know this is like super fanboyism and highly speculative, but that is what Star Citizen is. It's a game based on speculation and hopes and dreams about what gaming can actually be. It's why it's one of the most successful Kickstarters to date, and it's why I continue to support the game. And if you guys are inspired and decide to buy a copy of the game for yourselves, again, remember to use my referral code for some extra in-game currency and help me unlock some really cool high-level ships. As always, guys, thanks for watching. If you want to watch the full video of this without me talking over it, I'll put a link to it in the video description. And I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.